The alarms blared across the Galactic Empire's central command hub, a sound reserved for existential threats. High Admiral Valix froze mid-stride, his four eyes locking onto the holographic projection flickering above the war table. A ship, no, a blip, streaked across the edge of monitored space, moving at velocities that defied standard propulsion models. "Report," Valix barked, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Unknown vessel, Lord Admiral," a sensor officer stammered. "No transponder, no registry. Scanners can't get a clear read. It's like it's phasing in and out of reality." Valix's claws tapped against the table. "Rebels." "Negative. No faction we know has this tech. And look at its trajectory, it's not evading. It's ignoring our patrol grids." The projection zoomed in, revealing a sleek, angular silhouette, nothing like the bulky warships of the Empire or the jagged corsair designs of the Outer Rim clans. It moved with predatory grace, slipping past detection as if the Empire's vaunted surveillance net was mere fog. "Dispatch the 7th Intercept Wing," Valix ordered. "I want that ship disabled and boarded." The 7th Wing, 6 destroyers strong, dropped out of warp in a tight formation, their ion cannons humming to life. The unknown ship didn't alter course. Didn't accelerate. It simply was, untouchable, indifferent. "Target locked," the lead destroyer's captain announced. "Firing suppression barrage." A storm of ionized plasma lanced toward the intruder, and passed through empty space. The ship flickered, reappearing kilometers ahead, untouched. Again. The second volley met the same fate. Then, without warning, the ship moved. Not in a jump, not with the telltale flare of engines. It shifted, as if reality itself bent around it. In less than a heartbeat, it was behind them, then gone, vanishing into the void faster than their systems could track. Back at command, the silence was suffocating. Valix stared at the empty holofeed, his mind racing. No cloaking tech could do that. No known species could think that fast. Then the data finally processed. One of the junior analysts, a Zithian with trembling mandibles, whispered what everyone was thinking. "That wasn't evasion. That was a demonstration." Valix's blood ran cold. Because if something could outmaneuver the Empire's best without even trying, what happened when it decided to fight back? And why was it heading straight for the quarantined Sol sector? The Emperor's throne room was never silent, but today the air itself seemed to vibrate with tension. Valix stood at attention, his report hanging between them like a blade. "You lost it." The Emperor's voice was a whisper, yet it carried the weight of collapsing stars. "Not lost," Valix corrected, claws digging into his palms. "It disengaged. Deliberately. As if you were irrelevant." The Emperor rose, his obsidian armor swallowing the light. "A ship that doesn't exist. Moving like physics is a suggestion. And now it's dancing through our core systems." A hologram flared to life between them, security feeds from 3 different outposts, each showing the same sleek vessel slipping past defenses like a shadow. "This isn't a threat. It's a message." Valix exhaled. "We've mobilized the eternal will. If it won't stop, we'll burn its path out from under it." The eternal will was the Empire's fist, a planet killer, its hull studded with enough firepower to glass a civilization in minutes. It waited at the edge of the Serpentis belt, flanked by a dozen battleships, their guns trained on the single point where the unknown ship's trajectory would force an encounter. "All batteries primed," the weapons master announced. "No escape this time." Then it arrived. Not with a roar, not with the of reality, just there, hanging in the void as if it had always been. The eternal will fired. A storm of plasma, railgun slugs, and singularity projectiles tore through space, and the ship moved. Not in a straight line. Not even in a curve. It unfolded, twisting between the barrage like water through fingers, closing the distance in the time it took a nervous gunner to blink. Then it transmitted. The comms officer recoiled as the signal hit, a burst of raw data that bypassed encryption, flooding their systems with a language no one spoke anymore. "Dead tongue," the linguist croaked. "Pre-collapse. Earth origin." The Emperor's image flickered onto the bridge screen, his fury barely contained. "Translate it." A pause. Then, haltingly, "Asterisk. You were warned. Asterisk. The ship's engines flared, not to flee, to charge. And for the first time in living memory, the crew of the Eternal will heard the sound of their own doom, the scream of tearing metal as the unknown vessel rammed through their shields like they weren't there, its hull unmarred, its speed unchecked. Somewhere in the chaos, Valix realized the truth. This wasn't a ship. It was a scout. The wreckage of the Eternal will drifted in a slow, graceless spiral, its hull split open like rotten fruit. Aboard the surviving battleships, panic was a living thing. Crews scrambling to reload weapons that had already proven useless, engineers screaming about systems failing for no reason, officers bracing for an attack that never came. The unknown ship hung motionless at the center of the chaos, its smooth, angular hull reflecting the dying light of the crippled flagship. It made no move to finish them off. No boarding parties. No final strike. Just silence. Then the transmission hit. Every screen in the fleet flickered to life, displaying the same image, a human face. Not reconstructed from archives. Not some AI's approximation. A living, breathing woman with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "Galactic Empire," she said, her voice crisp, accentless, modern. "You've had your warning. Now you get the lesson." The feed split, showing a star map, Empire territory outlined in red, key systems blinking like targets. Then, in blue, a single point. "So, you thought you wiped us out." Her fingers tapped something off-screen. "You were wrong." The map exploded outward, blue markers flooding the void, hundreds, thousands, millions of points flaring to life in every corner of the galaxy. Hidden colonies. Shipyards buried in nebulae. Fleets drifting in the dark between stars. "We've been watching. Waiting. Learning." She leaned forward. "Your empire is built on fear. Ours. On patience." A new alert screamed through the fleet sensors. Not one ship now. Dozens. Hundreds. Emerging from cloak, from warp, from places scanners swore were empty. All the same impossible design. All moving in perfect, silent unison. The woman's smile sharpened. "You don't get to rule the galaxy anymore." The transmission cut. The ships moved. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the Empire knew what it was to be prey. The Imperial throne shattered under the weight of the Emperor's fist. "Full retreat." His voice shook the command center. "You're ordering a retreat." Valix didn't flinch. Not a retreat. A surrender. He threw the tactical display onto the main screen, the entire Empire's military strength blinking out system by system. Not destroyed. Disabled. Every ship, every station, every weapon platform gone dark in perfect synchronization. They didn't just beat us. They turned off the war. The comms console lit up unbidden. The same human woman appeared, this time with a dozen different star systems reflected in her pupils. "Your last chance," she said simply. "Stand down or we erase your entire history from the galactic record." A junior officer whimpered. The Emperor's breathing turned ragged. This wasn't conquest, it was something far worse. Oblivion. Outside the viewports, the first human dreadnoughts slid into orbit, their smooth hulls drinking the sunlight. No weapons visible. None needed. Valix reached for the fleet-wide channel. "All Imperial forces," he said, tasting ashes. "Power down immediately." The human woman nodded once. "Wise choice." Her image flickered, replaced by a single line of text that burned itself into every screen in the Empire. "Welcome to the second age of man." The Imperial archives burned. Not with fire, but with something far more thorough, a cascade of system failures wiping millennia of conquest from the databanks in perfect, surgical strikes. On 1,000 worlds, propaganda screens flickered and died mid-transmission. The Emperor's face froze, distorted, then dissolved into static. In the ruins of the High Command, Valix watched as human engineers walked untouched through the wreckage, their hands flickering with holographic interfaces that rewrote the very air around them. One paused beside him, studying the shattered remains of the Imperial seal. "You don't understand," Valix rasped. "Without the Empire, there's nothing holding the galaxy together." The human smiled, tapping a device on his wrist. Across the planet, the lights came back on, but not the sickly yellow of Imperial power. A clean, blue-white glow. "That's where you're wrong," he said. You held it together with fear. We'll use something better. Above them, the sky rippled as the first of the new constellations flared to life. Not random stars, but precise formations forming symbols no Imperial could read. A message. A promise. The human turned to leave, then glanced back. You'll learn. Or you won't. Either way, the galaxy moves on. Outside, the first rains began to fall, washing the soot from the streets. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. For the first time in living memory, it was safe to do so. The last Imperial stronghold fell without a single shot fired. Deep in the heart of what was once the Emperor's private sanctum, a single terminal blinked to life. The access codes that had secured the most classified systems in the galaxy dissolved like smoke before a human cipher key. Files unlocked themselves. Archives disgorged their secrets. The complete history of Imperial atrocities scrolled across the screen in relentless procession. A human operative watched the data flow with detached interest, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. They really did keep records of everything, she murmured. Even the genocides they swore never happened. Across the room, the last Imperial commander stood shackled in gravcuffs, his once pristine uniform hanging in tatters. You don't understand what you're doing, he spat. Without order, without control. We remember the Pax Romana, the human interrupted without looking up. And every other empire that claimed it was the only thing standing between civilization and chaos. She flicked a file toward the main display, security footage of human colonies burning, dated to the Purge Wars. Your order wasn't peace. It was a boot on the galaxy's throat. The terminal pinged. A single message appeared in crisp, unadorned text. Asterisk archival purge complete. Memory protocols initiated. Asterisk. Outside, the sky shimmered as orbital projectors flared to life. Across every former Imperial world, the truth began to rain down, uncensored histories playing on loop in the air above every city square. The lies unraveling in real time. The human stood, stretching. Come on, she said to the stunned commander. You should see this part. She led him to the observation deck, where crowds were already gathering in the streets below, their faces upturned as the past unfolded above them. The first shouts of outrage were just beginning to rise. The commander shuddered. This will tear civilization apart. The human smiled. Or finally let it grow up. The first riots lasted 3 standard cycles. On what had been Imperial Center, the mobs tore through the Ministry of Truth with a fury that melted Durasteel doors. Archivists fled as centuries of carefully curated history dissolved under the glare of projectors humans had mounted in every public square. A child's finger traced freshly revealed bullet holes in a museum wall, impacts from a massacre that officially never happened. Valix watched from a crumbling balcony as the planet tore itself apart. You've unleashed chaos, he said to the human liaison beside him. The woman sipped something dark and steaming from a ceramic mug. No. We turned on the lights. She nodded toward a group of protesters below, their signs bearing names of planets the Empire swore were uninhabited before glassing them. That's not chaos. That's justice waking up. An explosion rocked a government complex across the plaza. The human didn't flinch. You could stop this, Valix pressed. Your ships are busy. She set down the mug. We're dismantling the slave mines at Kessel, freeing the prison colonies in the Tartarus Belt. A notification pinged on her wrist display. Ah! The last of the Emperor's black sites just went offline. Below them, a new chant rose above the din as the crowd parted for a procession of survivors, broken things hauled from hidden basements, their existence undeniable now. The air smelled of burning propaganda leaflets and something like hope. The human stood, brushing dust from her pants. Your people are finally having an honest conversation. Might want to listen. As she walked away, Valix realized the screams he heard weren't just anger. They were the sound of a galaxy learning to breathe. The first interstellar broadcast from New Earth lasted precisely 17 minutes. No fanfare. No triumphant speeches. Just a simple feed showing a human child planting a sapling in soil recently reclaimed from radioactive wastelands. The image split to show similar scenes across 100 worlds, once devastated ecosystems now sprouting green shoots under alien suns. In a former Imperial interrogation chamber that now served as a makeshift communications hub, Valix stared at the flickering display. "This is your victory message?" "Gardening." The human technician monitoring the feed didn't look up from her console. "We're not big on monuments." Her fingers danced across the controls as the transmission shifted to show engineers dismantling orbital weapons platforms, repurposing the metal into irrigation systems. "You build to destroy. We destroy to build." A proximity alert chimed. The main screen switched to a live feed from the edge of the system, where a ragged flotilla of former Imperial ships drifted under escort. Not as prisoners, as refugees. "Your people?" Valix asked. "Yours," the technician corrected. "Survivors from the Gulmera labor camps. We found them mining what was left of their own homeworld." She zoomed in on the ship's battered hulls, pockmarked with scars from Imperial pulse cannons. Funny how quickly loyal citizens become expendable assets when the regime collapses. The transmission cut abruptly to a star map, new trade routes glowing gold between systems that had known only blockade lines. No borders. No fortifications. Just connections. Valix felt something crack in his chest. "What now?" The technician finally met his gaze. "Now you choose. Keep staring at the ashes dash," she nodded to the screen, where the child was now watering the sapling, "or help us plant something better." Outside, the first unregulated starship in generations fired its engines, bound for the frontier. The First Galactic Congress convened on the ruins of the Imperial Palace. No thrones. No banners. Just a circular forum carved from the same marble that once held statues of conquerors, now repurposed into seating for hundreds of species. The air hummed with 100 different languages running through human-designed translation pendants, each voice carrying equal weight for the first time in recorded history. Valix took his seat between a methane breather from the Outer Rim and a furred diplomat from a world the Empire had classified as non-sentient. The human moderator, the same woman who had delivered their surrender ultimatum, stood at the center with no podium, no guards. Just a data pad glowing with the day's agenda. "We begin with Item 1, she said, and the holograms flared to life above them. "The Cressian famine." A collective shudder ran through the assembly. Cressia had been a lesson, a system that dared protest Imperial food quotas, left to starve as warning to others. The holograms showed current footage, human ships unloading grain, medical teams treating survivors, the first green shoots pushing through poisoned soil. The Cressian delegate stood on trembling legs. We have no words for this." "You don't need any," the human said. She tapped her pad. Next, the dismantling of the Omega shipyards. New images appeared, not of destruction, but conversion. The dreadnought assembly lines retooled into civilian freighters, the slave pens transformed into schools. An Imperial remnant delegate surged to his feet. "This is madness. Without a central authority." "Try listening," the human cut in. The display shifted to show real-time trade flows, resource distributions, cultural exchanges already flourishing without Imperial oversight. "You ruled through scarcity. We're proving there's enough for everyone." As the debate continued, Valix noticed the human moderator step back, fading into the crowd. No grand declarations. No demands for gratitude. Just work. Outside the great windows, the first unregulated merchant fleet descended through the atmosphere, its hulls painted with 100 different insignias. The future, it seemed, needed no emperor. The last transmission from the human fleet arrived without warning. Valix found it waiting in his personal terminal one morning, a single data packet labeled for what comes next. No fanfare. No ceremony. Just coordinates and a timestamp. When he arrived at the designated location, the skies were empty. No massive warships. No grand armada. Just the ghostly afterimage of warp trails already cooling in the void. The message played when he stepped onto the observation deck. "We're done here." The human commander's face filled the view screen, older now, her hair streaked with gray but her eyes just as sharp as the day she'd shattered the Empire. "The foundations are laid. The tools are yours. What you build now is up to you." Behind her, the bridge of her flagship hummed with quiet activity as crew prepared for departure. We've got other dark corners of the universe to shine light into. Asterisk. A star chart flickered to life, showing human expansion routes pushing relentlessly outward. Not conquest, not colonization, but something else entirely. Tell them we were here, the commander said. Asterisk. Tell them we remember. And tell them... Asterisk, she smiled faintly. Asterisk. To water the damn trees. Asterisk. The transmission ended. Valix stood alone in the silence, watching the last human warp signature fade from the scanners. On the planet below, the first generation born after the Empire played in streets that no longer ran with blood. Somewhere in the gardens outside, a sapling planted during the first days of liberation stretched its branches toward the sun. The future had arrived. And for the first time in 1,000 years, it was unwritten.